In ancient Persia, a brave young woman named Esther became queen, but she had a secret. When danger came to her people, she risked everything to save them. This is the powerful story of courage, faith, and destiny. This is the story of Esther. A long time ago, there was a huge empire called Persia. It was the most powerful kingdom on earth, and it was ruled by King Xerxes, also known as King Ahasuerus. His kingdom stretched from India all the way to Ethiopia, 127 provinces in total. He had wealth, armies, and servants, and he lived in a grand palace in a city called Susa. One day, King Xerxes decided to throw a massive party to show off his glory and riches. This party lasted for 180 days. That's half a year. After that, he gave another party that lasted 7 more days just for the people in Susa. There was fancy food, golden couches, and beautiful decorations. The king was very proud of all he had. During the party, King Xerxes called for his queen, Queen Vashti, to come before him and his guests. He wanted everyone to see how beautiful she was. But Queen Vashti did something shocking. She said no. She refused to come before the king and the crowd. The king was embarrassed and angry. His advisors told him that if the queen disrespected him, other women might do the same to their husbands. So they advised the king to remove her as queen, and he did. Queen Vashti was banished. Now the king needed a new queen. Some time passed, and King Xerxes missed having a queen. So his servants came up with a plan. They would search the entire empire for the most beautiful young women and bring them to the palace. There, the women would receive beauty treatments, and the king would choose one of them to be his new queen. Among the women taken to the palace was a young Jewish woman named Esther. She was beautiful, kind, and humble. But she had a secret. She was a Jew, one of God's chosen people. Esther had been raised by her older cousin Mordecai. After her parents died, Mordecai told her not to tell anyone she was Jewish, and she obeyed him. Esther was taken into the palace, where she spent a full year getting ready. She was given special oils, perfumes, and food. Everyone who met her liked her. She didn't act proud or boastful. She was gentle and sweet. Finally, the day came for Esther to meet the king. Out of all the young women, the king chose Esther to be his queen. He placed the royal crown on her head and held a great celebration. But still, no one knew she was a Jew. Not long after Esther became queen, her cousin Mordecai discovered something dangerous. While sitting at the king's gate, he overheard 2 palace guards planning to kill King Xerxes. Mordecai quickly told Queen Esther, and she told the king in Mordecai's name. The king investigated the matter, found it to be true, and had the 2 guards punished. The event was written down in the royal records, but at the time, no reward was given to Mordecai. Now enters the villain of the story, a man named Haman. The king gave Haman a high position in the kingdom and ordered everyone to bow down to him. But Mordecai refused to bow. He would only bow to God. This made Haman furious. When he learned that Mordecai was a Jew, his anger grew even more. He didn't just want to punish Mordecai, he wanted to wipe out all the Jews in the empire. So Haman went to the king and lied. He said, "There's a group of people in your kingdom who don't follow your laws. They're different from everyone else. If it pleases you, let me write a law to destroy them." The king trusted Haman. He gave him his royal ring, which allowed Haman to sign laws in the king's name. Haman wrote a decree to kill all the Jews, young and old, men and women, on a single day. That day was chosen by casting lots, called Pur, and it was written in every language across the kingdom. The city of Susa was confused and troubled. The people didn't understand why such a harsh law was passed, but Haman sat down to drink with the king as if nothing had happened. When Mordecai read the terrible law, his heart broke. He tore his clothes, put on rough sackcloth, and covered himself with ashes, a Jewish way of showing grief. He went through the city crying loudly. He stopped at the king's gate because no one wearing sackcloth was allowed inside. All across the kingdom, Jews were in deep sorrow. They fasted, cried, and wept. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes, praying for mercy. Esther heard that Mordecai was mourning and was very upset. She sent one of the king's servants, a trusted messenger named Hathach, to find out what was wrong. Mordecai gave Hathach a copy of the decree and told him everything. He begged Esther to go to the king and plead for her people. But Esther replied, "Everyone knows that anyone who goes to the king without being invited can be put to death. I haven't been called to see the king in 30 days. Mordecai sent back a powerful reply. "Don't think you'll escape just because you're in the palace. If you remain silent, help will come for the Jews from somewhere else, but you and your family will perish. Who knows? Maybe you were made queen for such a time as this." Those words shook Esther's heart. She realized she had a choice to make. She sent this message to Mordecai: "Tell all the Jews to fast for me for 3 days. Don't eat or drink. I and my servants will do the same. Then I'll go to the king, even if it means death. If I perish, I perish." After 3 days, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace. Her heart pounded. Would the king welcome her, or would he order her death? When the king saw her, he was pleased. He held out his golden scepter, a sign that she was welcome. Esther stepped forward and touched the tip of the scepter. "What do you want, Queen Esther?" the king asked. "Even up to half the kingdom. It will be given to you." But Esther didn't ask right away. She was wise. She said, "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come to a banquet I've prepared." The king agreed. Haman was quickly summoned, and the 3 of them enjoyed the meal. At the banquet, the king asked again, "What is your request?" Esther smiled and said, "Please come to another banquet tomorrow, then I'll tell you." Haman left the palace feeling proud. He had just dined with the king and queen. But when he passed by Mordecai and saw that he still wouldn't bow, Haman became furious again. He went home and bragged to his wife and friends about his riches and honors. But he added, "None of it makes me happy, as long as that Jew Mordecai sits at the gate." His wife and friends said, "Build a huge gallows 75 feet high and ask the king to hang Mordecai on it in the morning." Haman loved the idea. The gallows were built that very night. That same night, the king couldn't sleep. He ordered the royal records to be read aloud to him. As the servant read, he came to the part where Mordecai had saved the king's life. By reporting the plot of the 2 guards, the king asked, "What honor did we give Mordecai for this?" "Nothing," the servant replied. Just then, Haman arrived early to ask about hanging Mordecai. But before he could speak, the king asked him, "What should be done for the man the king wants to honor?" Haman thought, "Who could the king want to honor more than me?" So he said, "Put royal robes on him, place him on one of the king's horses, and have one of the nobles lead him through the city, shouting, 'This is what the king does for the man he delights to honor.'" The king smiled and said, "Great, do all of that for Mordecai, the Jew who sits at the gate." Haman's heart sank, but he had no choice. He had to honor the man he hated most. Afterward, Haman hurried home, full of shame. His wife and friends told him, "If Mordecai is Jewish, you're in serious trouble." Before he could respond, servants came to take him to Esther's second banquet. That evening, the king and Haman returned to Queen Esther's second banquet. They drank wine and enjoyed the feast. Then the king asked again, "Queen Esther, what is your request? I will give you anything you ask, even up to half my kingdom." Esther took a deep breath. The time had come. She looked at the king with courage in her eyes and said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, O king, please grant my life and the lives of my people. For we have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and wiped out." The king was shocked. "Who would do such a thing?" he demanded. "Where is the man who dared to do this?" Esther turned to her left and said, "The enemy is Haman, this wicked man." Haman's face went pale with fear. The king was furious. He stood up and stormed out into the garden to cool off. Haman knew his life was in danger, so he stayed behind to beg Queen Esther for mercy. As the king returned, he saw Haman falling on the couch where Esther was sitting. The king shouted,